actually a continuation from the last episode. As Christina mentioned at the end of the last one, we had so much to say about this topic, so we broke it up into two. And this is part two of our conversation on money. We took a very meandering path here, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thanks,
Enjoy.
everyone. Enjoy. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
I struggled with this, and actually I have to thank my husband for like helping me get more comfortable with this, which is like one of the things we started talking about money mindset, and one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is this idea of scarcity, right? That there isn't enough money to go around. And the truth is there is plenty of money to go around. It's just being creative and figuring out how to get what you need, right? And so like we never wanted our kids to grow up with this scarcity mindset of like, oh my God, we don't have enough, like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do type of thing. I struggled with that because it's always easier to say, no, we can't afford that, right? But if you do that, I think you're risking your child sort of growing up with that scarcity mindset and this like thought in the back of their head that like, oh, there's not enough, right? There's not enough to survive. There's not enough to do what I want to do type of thing, which can impact how they view a lot of different things. Right. When you plant that scarcity mindset, it's not just about money, it's about everything. Right.
It's about what you accept in relationships or like, whether they're platonic or romantic. It's about, what standards you have for yourself in life, like across the board, because you think that there's not, better or more out there for you.
Right.
So yeah, I completely agree. Like if it's not in the, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think that that's incredibly important. Not in the budget makes it your choice about what to do with your money. It's not a limitation.
Yeah, and it may legitimately not be something you can afford. Like there are times when we've made a choice about how we allocate our funds, right? So there are times when we can't afford something, even though, we make quite, more six figures, but I still don't want my kids to feel that. Well, let me say, this is the struggle I have, because sometimes I do want my kids to feel that, right? Only because like one of my biggest fears, because we make good money, we're, comfortable middle class, whatever, I don't want my kids to not understand the value of what they have and the fact that we are incredibly privileged, right? Like there are things that we don't have to worry about. Like if something breaks or gets ruined, like we can afford to go to the store and replace it, right? It's not one of those things where if it's broken, we're done. Like there's nothing, we don't have any ability to fix that, whatever broke, right? So like, but I don't want my kids to not understand the value of that, which can happen if they don't understand that there are things like that affording something. So it's a really weird like dynamic and dichotomy, and I don't know if we're going to do it right. I guess we'll find out when they get older.
Well, I think that that's really important too. And I've often thought about that, and I've like had my, my thoughts about that, like as like meeting other people, and, not even other women, but also like other men too. And, wanting to give everything to, our children. But I definitely think that children don't benefit from never hearing no, or from not learning to appreciate money. And I think if you are just kind of handed everything, and, if parents, if like we as parents, like don't say, no, sometimes, even if it's like, oh, we can't afford it, it's like, no, that's just not what what we're spending the money on right now. I think it does them a disservice, because then they can grow up just not understanding how to manage money in the first place. It can be like, well, I'm used to just having everything, so I'm just gonna spend. And I feel like that can make you even more of a spender, and like cause even more of that challenge of
risk them not learning how to hustle. Because I mean, most
Exactly.
Those
Yeah.
people who learn how to hustle early on, it's out of need, not because they
Yes.
enjoy the hustle, it's because they didn't have any other way to survive.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think that that's so important. Like I'm all about honesty. So like when, if we're having a tougher time, financially, because as a consultant, we have ebbs and flows, right? I can go
Yes.
from making, you
Any
know,
small business,
a
any
lot of
business.
money
Yeah,
to making nothing for a few months. And I mean, obviously you put your money aside and you do this, that, and the other so that you're
right.
good. But I have to, be wise in the periods where I'm not working on a contract, right?
Yeah,
So I'm all about honesty. And then, my little one's going through some things right now, so that does, add additional strain, right? So
yeah,
even though I can do well as a single mom and all of that, when life throws you some curveballs, things can
yeah,
still
100%.
become tight, like even if you are doing good things with your finances. But I think there's so much value in being honest. If it truly is like that there is some financial difficulty right now, then it's not just like, oh, well, it's not in the budget right now. It's like, no, mommy needs to use the resources for, different areas right now,
Yeah,
and it's okay to change that. It's still not saying like I can't afford it, because I honestly like and truly believe, and it's something that kind of has been natural, but then I also have to like work on it. Like I honestly truly believe like I can have $0 in my pocket, but I will be okay. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, I genuinely believe that. Like, that's
I
not
feel
gonna
the
stop me
same way.
from doing what I have to do, or, buying things or providing for my kid.
Yeah,
Somehow the universe is going to send me exactly what I need. And I genuinely, believe that. So I'm not gonna stress like if I ever have like any financial challenges, but I do think, it's important that they get an example of that.
yeah,
It's not just, oh, everything's fine and dandy. I'm just like not I'm choosing not to, pay
yeah,
money on that. It's like, well, whether things are great or whether things are a challenge, like I still have a choice about what I do with my money. And I think
yeah,
that is what I try to, teach my kiddo. But I don't try to shield my kiddo. I
yeah,
do to an extent. Um, but I don't try to shield my kid from the fact that there are challenges in
yeah,
life, because like that's exactly that. Adversity is how you develop that grit, that
yeah,
fighter spirit, and like to overcome those challenges. And if I shield you from the fact that you are, privileged, you're fortunate, and that other people don't have it the same, or sometimes we, have to be a little bit more scrappy too, I'm doing you a disservice, because I'm not actually preparing you to be ready for life. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah,
So I think that that's exactly that fine line of not messing with that mindset, and like making sure
right.
that the abundance mindset is there, but also
At the same
understanding
time,
real life
yeah,
scenarios and being able to like practice it like in real life. Like it's so it's really challenging,
it
but
is.
so
I mean,
important.
and you know what? Like, I think every family, every parent is going to have a different way to do it. And, that's part of why that's why we talked about making friends. It's good to meet other people and actually develop enough, deep enough relationships to figure out, okay, how does this person do it? How do you do it? How do I do it? Like, you can take something from everyone you meet and sort of figure out, okay, is this something I want to incorporate? And it's one of the things, like, I know a lot of people have issues with social media, but social media gives us access to so many more people talking about some of this stuff, right? Like, how do they handle it in their families? How does this person do it, that person do it? And you figure out, like, I mean, the reality is none of us are going to know whether the stuff we're trying with our kids is going to work, right, until
Yeah.
they're grown. And even then, I guarantee you our kids are going to have like complaints about how we did things.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Listen, like at the end of the day, I think that kids, what they really and truly need at like when they're children, are like they need their basic needs met, because they cannot meet those for themselves. So they
Yeah,
need, food, water, shelter. They need love.
yeah,
That is one of our human basic needs.
yep,
They need time with their parents, and they need to be supported. I genuinely believe like those are the main things that we have to do as parents. Everything else is the extra, and I think it's
Yeah,
really good. And I know like we have our wants that we want to provide for our children. But a lot of times we also have to check ourselves and see if like that's more about us or if it's
yeah,
actually about our kids.
agreed.
But I think as long as we are meeting those core basic needs, we're already doing a great job as a parent, because unfortunately there are some kids that don't have those basic needs met.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And I think it's all about just making sure that we actively meet those basic needs. And that's already setting them up for a better trajectory than,
yeah,
some other children, that don't have those basic needs met. But then, when we are from, a background that's a little bit more privileged, or we've worked hard to, bring ourselves up to into a, you know, class or whatever that will allow us to provide some of those wants, then I believe it's really important to provide those wants. But part of it for me is also giving back. So anytime there's an opportunity, whether it's adopting an angel at Christmas time or a family, and you go
yeah,
shopping and buy, you know, stuff for that family for them to have Christmas presents, or if it's like at the grocery store and they're like, do you want to donate to, and they literally just say, do you want to donate to, and I say yes, like immediately,
yeah,
right? Because I think that is a part of it. That's abundance right there. It's not just about like what you're receiving, but it's also about like, well, what are you putting back out there,
yeah.
and it's knowing that
I
you're
like
putting
that.
that money out there because there are people who need it. And I need my little one to see that. Like I get him involved whenever it's, even if it's like going to buy back to school shopping supplies for kids, like,
Yeah,
and donating them like at Walmart or whoever does it. It's like, no, we're gonna do this because there are kids who are not as
don't,
fortunate
yeah,
and need it, and I think that's also a good way to, check that, and like that balance of not becoming like unappreciative of
yeah.
the life that you have now, and and all of that. So I don't know. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think getting back to like, well, not getting back to it, I think it's an interesting point because I feel the same way. Like, I think you have to put back into the universe or into the community, whatever the thing is that people believe, right? And everyone's going to believe in a different thing. But I think that where people get tripped up sometimes is you don't know where it's going to make the most impact,
Yeah.
right? And I know for me, like for a while, I'm not as worried about this anymore, but for a while I was always concerned, like, is the organization that is soliciting donations at this time, are they really going to provide value, or am I lining somebody's pockets? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I want to, I work hard for the money I make, and I want my kids to understand that there are different sort of levels, right? There are organizations that are great organizations and like provide value, and then there are others that are, bogged down by administrative expenses, for lack of a better word, right? Like
Yeah.
you're basically paying other people's salaries, but it's not putting a ton back into the community, or it's not accomplishing
Yeah.
the goal that they're saying they're going to accomplish, or at least not to
Yeah.
the level you want. And we've always had this struggle, like, do we put money in or do we put time in?
Yeah. I
Right?
think I think that's really I think that's the distinction. I'm like, if you want to make the most impact, then you do the work.
Yeah,
That's how you do, like that is how you're going to make the most impact. Like, yeah, you can donate money, and there are, ways that like your money can really make a direct, correlation, like a direct
yeah.
impact. But I think the most like one-to-one relationship you can have to making an impact is doing the work. So my little one and I volunteer with Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful,
Oh, that's
and
great.
we'll go like, yeah, like we'll go do, park cleanups, or we will go plant, new gardens in public parks and different things like that. And we've done that like for almost 5 years now.
That's
And
amazing.
it's something that we both love to do, and we want to volunteer in other settings as well. But this has
Mhm.
been one that, like, from an age appropriate standpoint, has
Yeah.
been,
And gets them
something that we
outside and
can do
everything.
and has. Mhm.
Yeah,
So, and
that's
my
great.
little one like loves animals. So it's very easy for him to be emotionally invested in it because he knows that littering is so bad for animals,
Yeah.
and he wants to protect like animals in the environment. And it's just always been something that's really, close to home for us.
Yeah.
So, I think getting the kids involved to volunteer in an age appropriate way, of course, like,
Yeah.
is so, so important. And I think that's the best way that you can make an impact. But then when it does come, because we all hear about the organizations that are not in it for the right reasons, and that
Right.
sucks because it's always the
The
bad
bad
apples that
apples.
will pull the
They're
bunch
ruined
or
that.
whatever.
Yeah.
And that sucks, but, I try not to think about it. Like, for me, if
Yeah.
I'm at Publix, because I respect Publix, and for folks who are not, like, in the southeastern region of the United States, Publix is a grocery store.
Yes.
But, I love that store, and
Yeah.
I trust and respect the institution of Publix. So if they are asking me to donate, and usually it's something, large, like March of Dimes, or,
Yeah.
Feeding America, stuff like that, then I'm immediately gonna, say yes. A
Yeah.
lot of times, like, if I see the booths and things like that set up outside the store, especially if it's a more obscure organization, then, those are the ones that I have like a little bit of a harder time,
Yeah.
because I'm just like, well, I don't know who you are, like, not just the person there in front of me, but this organization, like, I don't know. So maybe I'll listen, um, and find out. But I'm more like apt to just seek out, organizations like the ones that I am passionate about, like March of Dimes, and, Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful, or, whatever it is in
Yeah.
other parts of the world. And, like the Metropolitan Ministries, and, Meals on Wheels, stuff like that. And do it that way. Like, for me, volunteering has always been like one of my pastimes, I guess. Like, I love to volunteer. I I've always had, like, again, going back to money, an aversion to trading my time for money, right?
Yeah.
If I could just volunteer for just various organizations, and that's it, and then the finances take care of themselves, that would make me very happy, because I have no problem with trading, like, giving my time for something that's a worthy cause.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to, like, instill that in my little one as well, to be willing to put your time where it really matters,
Yeah.
and, like, figure out, like, the financials and how you actually make money, like, in the least amount of time as possible.
Right. Well, and
you
I
know
think that's really important, and actually goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is like the mindset around money and how people think about it, which is the goal, I think, shouldn't be just to like accumulate as much stuff, like the biggest house and the best cars and all that stuff, right? The goal is to have enough money to be able to take care of yourself and your family and still give back, whatever
Yeah,
giving back looks like, right? For some
yeah,
people, it's giving back with money, like being able to donate to worthy causes. And for some, it's being able to still earn enough to take care of your family and be able to volunteer your time and provide like that personal, you know, that personal impact, that personal effort into
mhm,
whatever cause, right?
yeah, yep,
And that's
exactly.
and that's the whole point, right? Is that,
Yeah,
we talk about like, how important it is to like earn money and whatnot. It's not to be able to buy a house. I mean, it can be if that's what you need to survive, right? You have like a family of 7 and you need space, right? So that your kids aren't all bunking in one room. But it
yeah,
it's a tool. That's what I was trying to get to, which is money is a tool to accomplish other things. It's
yeah,
not the end all and be all. And that's where people get caught up, right? They think that, okay, I just want to make enough. I just want to make $1 million, right? I want to have that on my balance sheet.
yeah,
And it's not about that. It's, you need this tool just like you need a car to get to work, or you need a car to get your kid to whatever activity. Money is a tool. It's a vehicle to get you to things, right? To do
yeah.
certain things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, I think it goes back to, like how we talked about before, with that belief, like, money is the root of all evil. Um, and, you're like, no, money is not that. And exactly,
Yeah.
like, money is completely neutral.
Yes,
Like, it is
100%.
completely neutral. It's not good. It's not bad. we give it those connotations.
Yeah.
We make it the most amazing thing in the world, or we make it the most like horrible thing in the world. But
And
that's us doing
ironically,
that.
what connotation we give to it is going to impact how much or how little of it we can make,
Earn or
right?
keep
Because
as
or
well. Yeah.
keep.
Yeah.
Good, excellent point. So
Yeah.
when people think negatively about money, like when you truly believe in your subconscious actually thinks money is evil, or I'm going to lose some, like if I make tons of money, this is one I heard about, like you lose your friends, right? Like you lose people in your life when you make a ton of money. Like when you're
Yeah.
brought up with that mentality, or you think, or that's your mentality, forget about brought up, like when that's just the way you think, um, you will unconsciously sabotage yourself anytime you
Yeah.
get to like the ceiling of where your thought believes anything above that is too much, or is the level that's going to cause you to lose friends or become evil, or whatever the
Yep.
negative thought is, right?
Yep. 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 Exactly. Like if your ceiling is, $50,000 a year, like you can
Yeah,
start making above that, but then something's going to happen, and
you are
typically it's
going to sabotage
self-sabotage.
yourself. Yep.
Yes. And then you're going to go back to making $50,000 a year, or less.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that that's so incredibly important. And even if you're able to sustain, even if you're able to get to a new level of income, because you think that's what's going to help you to be more financially free, or to solve the problems that you're having right now. Like if you think making more money is what you need to do, then that is not the thing that you need to do. It's really more about the internal work. It's the thoughts, the
Yeah.
beliefs, and the behaviors. It's what we're doing with money, because you can go from making $50,000 a year to making $100,000 a year, and you can stay at that $100,000 a year level, because people do it. It
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
the challenge is that you get to that new level, but then the lifestyle creep, right? Because you
Yes.
haven't trained your mind or your mindset to understand and leverage your money in a way that's actually beneficial to you, your
Yeah.
family, and your life. Instead, it's like, okay, well, now I'm at this level of money. So if I was living paycheck to paycheck at 50,000, I'm going to start living paycheck to paycheck at $100,000 too.
Exactly.
And then you're going to want to increase that to 125, and then you're still going to be living paycheck to paycheck at
Right.
125,
And you'll still
because
feel poor.
exactly, because you haven't done the internal work or changed the actions and behaviors to,
Right.
make that increase in income make an impact in your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so incredibly important. And I've met, folks like that. And when I first started making like so much more money, I struggled with that too. Because I wasn't budgeting as, keenly as I should have been. Yeah, I made sure to pay my bills, and I, tried to
Yeah.
spend, only the income that I had available. But I wasn't as focused or intentional,
Hmm.
with my money. And that didn't come until like a little bit later, where I'm like, no, like I want to put this aside or put this somewhere else, so that, it makes more sense. Like I'm not gonna, I don't know, like just spend it.
Yeah. No, no,
you know?
I 100% agree with you. I think that's the biggest thing I've noticed, is that, you can make $1 million, but if you're spending $1 million, or if you're spending 1,000,005, like
Yeah,
1.5, you are poor. I don't care how
yeah,
much you make.
exactly.
You are literally one paycheck away from everything falling apart. And
Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't have to be like you lose your job. It could be a health issue, right? Where you don't have extra money to spend on that type of stuff. And I
yeah,
think a lot of people make that exact mistake, which is they think if I get to six figures, everything will be okay and I'll be
yes, yeah,
good. What they don't realize is if you start making six figures and you're spending six figures, it's not going to be good. Like
yeah.
the
So
good comes from having a cushion between what you're spending and what you're making, which is something I call discretionary income. But the bigger that gap is, the bigger your discretionary income, or the gap between what you're making and what you're spending is, the more comfortable you're going to be.
Yes,
So like
exactly.
if you're making 100 grand, if you're making six figures, if you're making 125, but you're living at 60, you're going to be
Yeah,
way more
you're good.
comfortable because you
Yeah,
know that you've got a cushion to cover your expenses. And I think
yeah,
that's a really hard concept, especially for parents, because the minute you start earning more, you want to give your kids more. You want them to not have to worry. You want to not have to worry about how you're going to provide for your children, how you're going to pay for groceries, especially nowadays with grocery bills being, the cost of groceries
ridiculous.
going up and the
Yeah,
cost of everything going up. And so like that is a hard thing for parents, for moms especially, to struggle with, which is like, how much can I increase to give my kids what I want but not risk the discretionary income cushion? And then what do I do with that discretionary income, right?
exactly. Yeah,
And
like,
that's two different conversations, right? It's like,
yeah,
how do you not meet what you're making, and then what do you do with the extra once you have extra? Because if it just sits there, I mean, my dad used to tell me, I think it was my dad, that like money burns a hole in your pocket, right? Like when you have it,
yeah.
you want to
Another
spend it.
scarcity mindset, by the way.
Yes, it is 100%, but it depends on how you direct it, right? Like everybody's going to have some version of scarcity mindset. I don't think there's any way to completely get away from it, even though I hope to be able to do that with my kids. But it's what you do with it. So like, I fully believe that. Like, I think for me, that's definitely when I have it, like I'm looking for ways to spend it, but we found ways to spend it that are investment ways, right? Like,
Yes,
so
exactly.
the money burns a hole in our bank account until we send it to the, like, on its mission, right? My husband and I
Yeah,
talk about like money being soldiers, like we're sending it out into the world to make more money, like to
yeah,
train and make more soldiers.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like all of your money, like every single dollar that you earn, like, it needs to serve a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's when you start managing your finances from that perspective is when life starts to change. But if you're just chasing like the income, and everybody, especially these days, it seems like everybody is chasing six figures. Everybody wants to make six figures. And I
But there's
started
a
really.
reason why. It's because it actually, like, six figures doesn't get you what, like, 50 years ago, $100,000 meant you were upper middle class, like very
Yes,
comfortable. You could have a nice
it's not
house.
the
You could
same
take
these
vacations.
days.
It's not the same. Like
Exactly.
you need like five times that. You need to be making $500,000 to be
Yeah, you
comfortable now,
exactly.
at least.
Yes,
And
multiple.
at least in the United States, like our average income is still like 50 or 60,000 for a family of four, which is
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah, it's
given
ridiculous.
inflation and everything that's going on. Like, and I think we're touching on slightly, controversial topics, but I think with the pandemic, what we are, I, I think what we're going to see happen is a huge crash across the board, because people are spending money they don't have.
Yeah.
Like the housing market was out
Yeah.
of control and people were getting laid off. Like I have no idea how people were able to afford a 3 to 5 time markup on homes, and buying
Yeah.
like crazy because they were all stuck, inside and didn't have anywhere to go. So you had to buy a house to have somewhere to like live, right? And do
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
then,
It
yeah,
was
like
just such a, yeah, like I yeah, I think about that too, and I'm like, like the
it's
folks who
coming.
bought at the top of the like pandemic, like even in that moment I'm like, what are we doing, guys? Like,
Yeah,
are we doing this? Like, you're really
it's
going to buy that house
crazy.
when it's, really, it's not, you're buying that house and it's like immediately like depreciating, which is not what a house is supposed to do for you.
Right. Look,
Um,
it's overpriced. You don't have the
yeah,
income because, like, I mean, people are losing money. Like, I know that we
yeah,
have one of the lowest unemployment rates we've had in a long time. I think it's like 3% at this point, which is crazy. There's like a
yeah,
$5 million 5 million job deficit of, like, there's 9 million jobs available and only 5 million people looking for jobs, like looking for
yeah,
work. Um, but at the same time, like with inflation, people have actually gotten a pay cut. Like they're not
yeah,
they're not
exactly.
making what
Like,
they
it
need
might
to
be,
make.
Yeah, like maybe you're still, gainfully employed, but if you're just like in that same job, if you're making the
Yeah.
same amount of money because of inflation, because everything else costs more,
Yeah,
the
you
cost
got a
of
pay
living's
cut.
gone up, you're making less money.
Yeah.
Period. Like, so that's, I don't, and that's the thing, like that's like just another one of like those like mindset shifts that like people need to make to understand like this is how you're actually impacted by
Right.
inflation.
And the
It means
reality
that
is,
you are,
yeah,
yeah,
and
the
the
value of
reality
your
is that
dollar is
if
less.
you're yeah, and if you're working for a company, it's not like demanding that the company pay you more isn't going to be the answer because they can't.
No, it's
They
not about
literally
more
cannot
money.
afford, they cannot afford to pay you what they're paying. Like most
Yeah,
companies, this country, whether people want to believe it or not, is run by small businesses. There are a
yeah,
handful of big corporations. Every other business is a small business.
it's a small business.
Those
Yeah, they're the
businesses run
fabric.
paycheck to paycheck. Like they're not making a ton of money.
Yeah.
The
Well,
owners tend to prioritize paying their workers over paying themselves, and they tend to pay. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to owning a business, but people don't realize there's a lot of like risk
risk
associated with
involved.
owning a business as
Yeah.
well, and a lot of effort and time that these business owners put in, as you know very well, right?
Yeah. Well, like, yeah, that's the thing. Like with with a small business in particular, like if that business, like if the top line is less than the bottom line and that owner needs to go out of business because they can't handle it, they are liable for that deficit in the
Yes.
bottom line, whether it's payroll or
Right.
loans that are out in the business's name, like they are liable because that's negative equity,
Yeah.
right? And you know, yeah, that's like so important. But I think like even going back, it's like why would you want to go and demand more money like from your workplace? And I'm not saying that people are actually going to do that, but it's like, if that's the thought process there, it's
Right.
like, well, inflation is going up, but I need a raise to cover these inflation. No, thank you.
Well, and the
I
thing
don't
is
think
like
so, right? It's more
and
like I need to change what I'm doing to cover this inflation.
right.
And I think that that's the mindset shift. It's again like that's thinking that I need more money to be okay. And the
Yeah.
truth of it is no, I need to change my habits and behaviors to make myself be okay, regardless of what the economy is doing, because
Yeah.
that's not outside of or that's outside of my control. Regardless of if my employer decides to lay me off because that's outside of my control, I have to
Right.
be able to know that I'm okay and will be okay. I can figure it out regardless of the things that I
Right.
can't control. The only thing you can control when it comes to money is what you do with it,
Yeah.
you know?
100%. And I think that goes back to like the streams of income, right? Like
Yeah.
not having your entire like family, financial life dependent on one stream of income that could go away for any number of reasons, right? People
Yeah.
found that out with the pandemic where businesses just shut down for like two months or more, depending on
Yeah.
what state you were in. In California, things were shut down for 2 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so like you had these businesses completely gone, and people were out of a job, and all of a sudden like they're trying to scramble to figure out what to do, and some people just sat on their couches and received government aid which they did that, but then that runs out eventually.
Yeah.
And like, and what did you do in the meantime? There
Yeah.
are people who took that time, received the government aid, but used that to try to start a business or build
Yeah.
something that would allow them the flexibility and the freedom, or set them up for something. And some of it, sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But at least they tried, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, 100%.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like, I mean, online businesses did very well in the
Yes,
pandemic,
yes, they did.
and that's because, well, people were online, and if you
Yeah,
were talking about or selling a product that would help people to weather what was going on, or even just providing entertainment like during the
yeah,
time where people needed entertainment, like you had a
right.
really huge opportunity. So I think that when the economy does like flop, like you have the choice, to decide if you want to be more of an opportunist, which I know that some people think that word is nasty
No,
and you
it's
don't want to
not.
be described in that way, but it's not. Like you have to be able to see the opportunity, and you have to, be scrappy enough to figure out, well, how do I find the opportunity even when something looks bleak? How do I
Yeah.
find the opportunity and create opportunity for myself, because it's always there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of figuring out and being willing to put in the work, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
But yeah, so wow, we can keep going. Like I
we
feel
can
like we
we
could
can
talk
keep
for a
talking.
long time
I
about
think
this
this one,
topic.
yeah, I think this one's gonna be like a 2 or 3 or 4 part
Yeah.
set of
Probably
episodes
even
because
more. Like there's so much
we've
to say like about money
yeah,
and
and
mindset.
100%. Like this is, and I think this is a topic that we'll continue to talk about on a regular
Yeah.
basis, because it's something that, look, whether you like money or not, it's something you have to deal with. Like this is just the reality. Like you need money to pay for your house. Like whether you're renting or owning, you're still paying for it, right? Like you don't actually own your home, your bed, the bank owns it, and you have to pay the bank. You have
Yeah.
to spend money on food every week unless you've got your own farm and you're growing it. But even then, you have to pay for the supplies you might need. Like, I think that there are probably ways to survive without money. And I know people have experimented with going off the grid and like attempting that life. The majority of our population is not prepared to do that. Like we just don't have
Yeah.
the ability to do that.
And our society is not necessarily like equipped for the majority of us to do that.
Exactly. Agreed 100%. And
Yeah.
most people don't really want to, because that involves a lot of like making everything yourself, which most
Yeah.
people
It's so much
don't
work.
have the time or
It's
energy to
it's
do
a lot of
anyways.
work. Listen,
Yes, it is.
convenience is something that I'm willing to pay for.
Yes,
Okay?
exactly.
In some cases, like depends on what it is.
Yeah. Well, this was a great call. I think we've it's been a long one, so we're
Yeah.
probably going to split it into two.
Yeah. Well,
But this is definitely not going to be the last time we talk about this. And it's been a great one.
yeah, definitely a good conversation, and more to come.
Yes. All right.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks, everyone.